Hi there, and welcome back to yet another episode at Station Road. So this video is in relation to another video that I've just posted alongside this one that relates to the production of some brick fences that are going around the coal merchant's yard. So this particular episode features the laser cutter and software that I use to create the kit bashed buildings and structures that I make on the Station Road layout. So this video is basically in response to a number of people who've asked questions about what laser cutter I use, what software I use, and also a little bit about how I go about setting up to produce a job on the laser cutter. And in this particular situation, it is in regards to some brick walls that are going to surround the coal merchant's yard. So I do go into a little bit of detail about the laser cutter, the laser module that I recently upgraded, and also some basic simple processes that I use within Lightburn in order to set up for a laser cutting job. So I think without further ado, let's just leap into the processes and the information about the laser cutter. So this is where all the laser cutting happens, and this particular machine is an Ortur Master Laser 2, so it's not the Pro version, which has, I think, a much more extensive frame, and it even has things like a big giant safety switch that you can slam if things go astray. So I would class this very much as a hobby laser cutter. So this is a diode laser, not a CNC. So the CNC lasers are far more extensive and they can pretty much cut through all sorts of stuff. So when I first bought this unit, which was a couple of years ago, it did come with its original laser module, which is actually this one here. Now, although in all the advertising it claimed, or it says that this laser cutter is 25 watts, but that doesn't actually relate to the actual power of the laser itself. So the 25 watts I think just relates to its power consumption as opposed to the actual output. So this laser module is actually 5 watts, so it's actually really quite a low watt laser, and it did actually work quite well, but I did find that particularly with MDF that you had to do quite a few passes. So I think on 5mm MDF it would take 4 or 5 passes, 3 or 2mm MDF it would take up to 3 passes to cut through, and that is at 100% power. So just recently this year I upgraded the module to a 10 watt laser. So the 10 watt laser is essentially 2 5 watt lasers that are then channeled through a series of mirrors into a single beam, which then hence gives the 10 watt laser beam. Now this module has made a huge difference. For example, I can cut through 2 to 3mm MDF in a single pass, and things like heavier card, that's also a single pass, but also at a much higher speed. So the difference between a 5 watt laser and a 10 watt laser is actually quite significant, and it certainly made a big difference. This laser also comes with a built-in air assist connection to it. So the air assist I've got hooked up, and that is just hooked up to this pump here, which I think is possibly designed for fish tanks, but it provides the air assist for in here. So what I've got in the cutting bed here is actually just a grill from an old air conditioning vent, which I picked up secondhand from somewhere. So you can actually get professional grids. I think some of them are called honeycomb grids, and of course you can get ones that can actually utilize the entire space here. I haven't really sort of needed all this extra space, so I guess one thing to mention is this laser cutter can cut material up to 400 by 400 millimeters. So this is just an aluminium grid which I've anchored down with some screws and washers, and then that's just on some solid MDF. It's not ideal, obviously, and I guess at some point I will upgrade this and put in a professional cutting bed, and also put in something under here that's a little less resistant to the actual laser burning through here. I think some people actually use ceramics of some sort, which seems to be the best solution for resisting laser. So up above the machine I have a extractor vent which is very crudely made. It goes up to a fan that expels any smoke that comes off the machine. Once again, it's a little bit sort of a backyard system, and it really needs to be professionally enclosed, this whole laser cutter, and of course you can get professional enclosures as well, but I am at some point planning on making my own enclosure and connecting this vent up to a lid on the top so that we haven't got all the smoke just pouring out into the garage. So in terms of the cutting bed itself, one of the issues too that you encounter sometimes is that the material that you might be cutting might not be entirely flat, particularly things like MDF or card. It'll have a warp in it, it'll be slightly bowed, and so what I actually did is made up some little wee pegs, which is just a piece of square wooden dowel with a kebab stick poked into the end of it, and they actually fit really nicely into the grids in here, and basically I can clamp down the material around the edges, and so when I put the material in, I work out which way it's bowing the most, and if it's bowing with the bow going downwards, then of course I can put it in there, clamp it around the edges, and that keeps it nice and flat. So we'll go ahead and we'll actually do a little bit of cutting out. So we've got some brick wall texture that's already been pre-glued to some card, and we're going to cut out some brick walls from that texture, and we'll go through the process of how this is all set up and then cut out. So this is our brick texture here, and it's been printed out. It's already been pre-sprayed with a matte spray. I have spray glued it to some 1mm card, so this is actually going to be used for some brick wall around the coal merchant's yard, which of course is in a separate video. So I'm using this method of where I'm actually going to laser cut post applying the brickwork rather than the other way around, because I have tried it before and it does work, but the main thing is to make sure that the horizontal movement of the laser is actually lined up with the horizontal grid of the brickwork, because if it's on a slight angle in any way, then of course you're going to end up with brickwork that's all wonky. So what I've done in this stage here is just along the bottom here, I've just drawn a pencil line which is perpendicular to the actual brickwork along here. So I'm going to use this line here to actually line up the laser to make sure it's running in the right direction. So what I do, and this is why one of the things I haven't actually anchored this frame down, so as you can see I can actually move this frame around a little bit. So what I do is make a registration at one end with the laser and then adjust it ever so slightly until I've got the same registration at the other end here, and then I know that this gantry running across here is exactly in line with the brickwork. So we'll set this material in here, and as you can actually see you've got a slight bow in this material, so therefore of course it's going this way, and it has to go this way anyway because otherwise you're not going to see where the brickwork is. So I've got plenty of space around the outside, which is a good thing because that sort of just helps with the registration side of things. Now what I'm doing initially is I'm actually lining up the card with the actual cutting grid here, because I do actually have some marks on this MDF table here, which if I line that up with the feet of the actual frame here, it's very close to the actual correct alignment. So we can now slot in some of these pegs, which are going to help flatten the card out, because it's absolutely critical that the card is actually, or the material, whatever you're using, is actually completely flat, or as flat as you can possibly get it, because that is critical in terms of the laser's cutting depth. Right, so I'm going to switch everything on now, and unfortunately there's the extractor fan, there is a fan in here, there is the air assist pump, there is other fans and so forth, so it does actually make a bit of a noise, unfortunately, but there's not a lot I can actually do about that, so hopefully you'll still be able to pick up my commentary. So I've got the laser cutter hooked up via USB, and that's connected to a computer behind the camera. It's actually an iMac, so it operates fine off a Mac computer, and I'm using Lightburn for all my cutting, and I find Lightburn is actually a really good bit of software. It seems to just work without fail. So depending on what the material is that you're using in here, the first thing you need to do is get the height of the laser worked out. So the great thing about this new upgraded laser module that I bought is it comes with a little leg that you poke down, and then just unscrew the laser module sliding bracket, and then just slide it up and down until the leg is resting on your material, and then simply tighten it up. And that's as simple as that. That's all you have to do. That is now set at the correct height above the material. So we're in Lightburn now, and I'm not really going to make this a huge video about how Lightburn works, but some of the basic things include home and origin buttons. So the first thing we're going to do is click the home button, and that's of course going to send the laser back to its home position. What I'm going to do is import the file that I want to use, and it's this one here. So these are components of the brick wall that need to be cut out. So we'll open that, and it brings it into the cutting area. So this grid actually represents the maximum cutting area of this particular laser. So the first thing I've got to do is actually just get that laser registered in the correct orientation with the actual brickwork material. So on this tab here, the move tab, of course, we've got various position tools for moving the laser, then where we can set the origin and all those types of things. So the first thing I want to do is actually get the laser to that pencil line that I drew. So the first thing we're going to do is shift the laser head, and it's just moving it in 5mm increments, and in these settings here I can actually change these to any increment that you actually want. So I'm just getting it there visually at the moment, and down here is the button called fire, and that sends a test fire to the actual laser head. Now it's only 0.25% power, so it's not going to actually burn through anything. It's just purely indicating, and as you can see we now have this blue laser mark on the material. So I think I'm going to have to go down to 1mm increments, and we're just going to move that until that blue dot is directly on top of the line. And I think we've gone too far. We might need to even go to 0.5mm increments. and that appears to be in the right position. So now what we're going to do is we'll bump this right up to, we'll go up to 50mm increments, and we're now going to travel horizontally to the other end, and probably there will do. And it's possibly just slightly out, so what I actually do is just with a smidgen just adjust the actual entire laser frame. So I've just moved that laser frame by the most smallest nudge, and then if we go back to our first position and just check again down here, and I'm happy with that. So now the frame is lined up with the material. So the next step now is we need to get the laser actually into the brickwork area. So we'll drop our increments down to, say, I think we'll go back to 5, and then we can use the up arrow keys there, and that will actually increase the distance by increments of 5. So we're now moving the laser up. Might go back down to 5. And we're now inside the actual material that we want to cut, which is the brick area, and we can now set the origin. So that origin is now set to that particular part, and we can switch off the fire button. So now the actual laser machine is set up and ready to go. So heading back to our Lightburn software, we can now actually see where the actual laser is in relation to the laser cutting machine. So the first thing we want to do is we want to gather all the materials that need to be cut, and I move this to the laser position. So that now sends everything down to the point on the laser, and if you can imagine, we've got brickwork running around here. So now we can zoom in on this material, and the next step is to actually set the requirements for this material. Now this is 1mm card, it's got a thin layer of paper across the top of that, and I do have some presets for various things, and in here we've got a example or test sheet, and this is 1mm card. So you can download these files off the internet and put them through your laser cutter to work out what strength or what power you need to set the laser to, and also what speed you need to set the laser to. So I have a feeling in the past I've used 100% at 450 millimeters per minute. So they do say that you shouldn't really always have your laser set on 100% because it does reduce the actual life of the laser, but I don't think I use this laser so much so that I'm going to wear the laser head out prematurely. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the power and the speed. So we've already got it on 100% power, so we're going to change the speed to 450, which is going to crank it up a little bit further. Now what I tend to do, and particularly with this file here, is we've actually got some inside shapes as well, so I prefer to actually have the laser cut the inside shapes first before the outside shape is cut, because what tends to happen sometimes is if you cut the outside shape first and it may shift or move, or the air assist may actually even puff up and blow the piece of card actually out of its position. And so I cut the inside shapes first. So what I need to do here is select those internal shapes which are going to be cut out, and basically give them a new layer. So our laser, all the material is currently set on CO1, so I'm going to give this internal layer an 01 setting. So sorry, that layer is 00, so this layer is 01. So the internal shapes are now 01 and the outside shapes are 00. And then it's just a case of moving the 01 shapes, the internal shapes, to first in the queue. So what will happen is it'll cut these 01 shapes first, and then it'll finish off with the 00. But we notice here that now that we've put these on the 01, then we've dropped back our power. So I just need to adjust that back up to 450, because they're going to have the same equivalent power and speed settings. So that's pretty much it for setting up to cut this set of card. And because I don't have a professional enclosure, of course you need to wear these, because the laser can be quite damaging for your eyes if you stare at it. So as you can see, it is cutting the internal shapes first, and there is a set of 6 of those that it's going to cut. And hopefully with a bit of luck I've got the power settings correct, and also that the alignment of this frame is lined up perfectly with the brickwork as well. So this of course is the 1mm card. I often use the 2mm card. The 2mm card is mainly for base structures. So for example, the coal merchant sort of workshop and boiler workshop area building that I'm working on at the moment, that the base structure is 2mm card, and for that essentially really I just reduce the speed of the laser, and I think I set that on about 300 millimeters per minute and set at 100%, and it will cut through it with one pass. So to finish cutting the internal shapes, and so it's now cutting the external shapes. And from what I can see, without staring too closely, is it does seem to be lined up with the brickwork. So that's all cut out now, and it's just a case of getting this out off the cutting grid. And the theory is I should be able to lift this up, and that gets rid of the excess, and then we actually have our cut out sections of brick wall. So one of the only downsides, of course, to I think it probably relates more to a diode laser, is, and particularly with card, it seems to be card only really, is it does leave a sooty edge on the actual card itself. So that's our components there, but what I have to do is I have to brush out all the sooty bits around here just to tidy it up before I work with it any longer, because it can get quite messy. So there we have it. I certainly hope this video has been very helpful to those who are interested in the laser cutter that I use and roughly sort of how I go about producing some of the kit bash components that I use on the station road layout. Now, if I could say there was one purchase within the last few years that relates to the production of models, I would have to say the laser cutter is probably one of the best and most worthy purchases I've ever made. It has changed everything about how to produce scratch built card kits, and also how to modify and also improve on the scale scenes kits or any other downloadable kits that you can get off the internet. It has been an absolute godsend. It has just eliminated all the hard yards of having to hand cut material, and also be able to cut material that is so accurate and a hell of a lot more tidy and precise than if it was hand cut. So I popped a couple of links in the description that relate to the laser cutter and also the upgraded module that I use. So you can still buy this laser cutter, although I believe it really has been superseded by improved models. So if you're a very keen card kit set construction modeler, then I would seriously consider a laser cutter. It just simply changes everything, and I don't think I can really say that enough. So head over to the other video, and of course there's a link in the top corner for that, which actually shows these brick walls then being actually installed around the coal merchant's yard. So along with that other video, these are the two final videos for 2022. So hopefully very early into 2023 I'll be able to continue on with the coal merchant's yard area and continue on with other areas on the station road layout. So I'll sign off for now, and wishing you all a very happy new year, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Do take care, look after yourselves, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.